Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the three different assignments very quickly of what I expect and show you some of the tricks that I showed you in class today. The first assignment we're going to talk about is the research on variables, and then we'll talk about rewriting your procedures, and then finally, data collection. So researching variables that affect seed germination. If you click on this link right here in Google Classroom, I know I'm in my second period class. If you're in sixth period, it'll look the same. So if you click on that, you'll be directed to this document, and it says using tools, select research, tools, research, and there are a couple of things that I'm going to change right away. Mine are already set, but you might need to set yours. Click that arrow. I want to choose APA, although I don't really care, but if we're doing it right, let's go for it, right? So let's do APA, and then I think it automatically is on G, which if you look at, it says everything. It's Google, it's just regular Google. But I don't want regular Google. I want to look at what scientists are currently doing or what they've recently done. So if I click on Scholar, it's going to give me access to original research papers. These are primary sources. These are the papers that the researchers themselves wrote. So let's say I find this second one most useful. If I hover over it, I see that it's been cited by 160 people, or excuse me, 660 other papers. And I can click on PDF, and it opens up the document in a new tab for me, which I can then save by clicking on the Save button here, or I can read it. So it's going through the original research paper. It's kind of dense. I can help you with some of this as we move forward, but particularly if it's about your paper. But let's say I find this paper to be useful. So I will go back to my document. I will take my notes about that paper, and then I need to cite it. And there are two ways I can cite this awesome fact that I learned from that paper. The first is I can hover over this, and I want to cite it as a footnote. So if I click on Cite as Footnote, it puts a 1 in there, and it gives me the citation at the bottom of that page, which is great. And if, for whatever reason, if I add more text above it and this gets pushed to the next page, well, so does the citation. So it automatically takes care of that for you. But I also want to make sure, now that I've cited in text, I also need to put up my works cited. So when I hover back over this and I click Insert, I now have my works cited. And so the only other thing that you might need to do in your final paper is alphabetize your citations, but that's not as hard as actually having to format all of this properly. So I'm asking you to describe the other environmental factors aside from your independent variable that could affect seed germination from the gizmo or the simulation I'm about to talk about. Okay, so I'll leave that behind. When you're done, you'll see a little turn-in window up here. Click on that, and then you are done with that assignment. So then, let's close this. So I'm back in classroom now. And I want to talk about the rewriting procedures in germination and simulation. So there is a link here for good procedure writing. I found this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through this real quick about how to write a good procedure. You're using numbered steps. And so here's an example. How do you get out of bed? You wake up, which I don't know exactly how you wake up, but you wake up, you put your feet on the floor, you stand up, and you walk. That's far better than getting up and getting out of bed. The ones that are written in the good column here are in small steps that are discrete directions, and the other part is that they're repeatable. Somebody else could follow these directions and do essentially the same thing that you did, which is important for science, that somebody else can repeat it and verify it. Avoid pronouns. Don't say it. You're labeling everything, so instead of saying place it on the table, place the beaker on the table. And we use commands. Don't say 50 milliliters of water or take 50 milliliters of water. You measure them and you pour them. Okay? And keep it very matter of fact. This you don't need to do for your lab setup, for your procedures, but this will be really important for your science fair. And you need to include all steps. So because it needs to be replicated. So here, there's a missing step. Place the beaker on a hot plate and record the change in water temperature every 5 minutes. Well, that hot plate's not doing anything unless you set it to some heat. So you need to fill that in by saying turn on the hot plate to a setting of 6 or whatever, to be specific, okay? Even more specific would be turn on the hot plate so that the water can reach a certain temperature, whatever temperature that is, 100 degrees Celsius, okay? And this is that overview. So what I want you to do is click on rewriting procedures and rewrite your procedures for the independent variable that you selected for the online Gizmo. Which brings me to the last assignment, which is your data collection. This is a table that you will be putting your information into. So this is the document that you'll be working on. You'll be working on your own document. And you're going to be putting in data into, let me see if this works, into these cells or these cells. You're going to have to put in your levels of IV. Remember, we're doing a 5 by 5 model. And let me open up Explore Learning. So I went to explorelearning.com, logged in with the login information you created at the start of the year, and if you've not done that, you can do that through Blackboard under Biology and Getting Started. But once I've logged in, I see that my awesome teacher has loaded up this Gizmo, this simulation. So if I click on Launch, and notice I'm in Internet Explorer. Chrome doesn't support this, but if you have an iPad, there's an app for this. It'll work. There are ways to get around it, okay? So don't get frustrated. And let's let this load. All right, so this is the Gizmo. It just loaded. And if you notice, there are lots of things I can change. I can change seed types, amount of water, light, or temperature. And this is about germination, so I'm going to be looking for the number of sprouts to increase and the number of seeds to decrease. These are my parameters, so as I change this, the numbers over here change. And so when you do your background research, you should be looking at what are optimal values for water, light, and temperature for seed germination. So let's say that I'm testing the role of temperature. And I know that my ideal temperature is 18 degrees Celsius. Well, I'm going to go to 16. I want to test on seed type C. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And it's running my data day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And it tells me my seed status that I've got 96 sprouts. And that's fine, but that's at the end of 5 days. My data table, my graph, my table here says 3 days. So how the heck do I get to 3 days? The way that I get there is if I click on bar chart, table, I want to scroll down or scroll to 3.0 days. I still have 33 seeds, but I have 67 sprouts. So in my data table, I will write 67. Oops, not there. This is 16 degrees. But I have 67 sprouts. And then I'll go back and reset and rerun. And I can stop it after I get past 3. And I've got 60 now. So I'm going to put in 60. This is my second trial. And I'll go back and reset and redo it again. And I'll pause it after I get to 3. And I have 70 this time. So I'm going to do that 2 more times to get my 5 trials. And then I'll change my degrees. Because that's my, oops, that's not what I want you to see. I'll change my independent variable. So I'll reset, I'll bump this to 17 degrees, and hit play. And then at 3 days, I have 72. And so this is 17 degrees, and I have 72 sprouts. So I want you to do that for 5 trials for 5 levels, unless you're doing seed type, which you should only have 3. And you do 3 by 5 instead of a 5 by 5. Okay? And that's where I'm going to end it. I'm going to have a follow-up video on data analysis, what to do with these numbers after you've gotten them, and that part will be due on Thursday of next week. Okay?